Hello, everyone. This is Pittsburgh Pat. We're here with Ryan Doyle of the Verdigris Table. How are you today, Ryan?
Good morning.
Good morning. So we are doing our next day, morning after session recap, walk of shame, talk of shame of Dungeons and Dragons 5E, 5.5E, actually. We've been calling it, or 2024 rules. We're investigating those. And we had a session last night with five of us at the table. And yeah, so let's go through some of the stuff that we did. So many traps last night. Lots of traps.
Yeah, so we're in Ghosts of Saltmarsh. We're doing the Isle of the Abbey,
Right.
which is old school. We figured out, I forget now, 92 or 93 was the original version of it, and it is very much a dungeon crawler. It's got some like maze-like qualities, a lot of dead ends, a lot of traps. You're in the secret treasure trove beneath this evil cult's abbey. There was a secret door that you found, and it is very tomb-like, a lot of dead ends and false doors and undead guardians and construct guardians. It's very classic D&D.
Yeah, this is definitely classic. And it's the type of thing where we were joking that the sorcerer said that he had a quarterstaff of poking because every 10
Mhm.
feet he'd poke the floor or the wall or something with it. And this is an old style of play. And is it interesting to modern players, I guess is my that's a generalization. I don't like to make generalizations that much, but sometimes you have to in order to introduce a topic. But exploration of dungeons, I think, was really that was an essential part of D&D in the 70s, 80s, maybe early 90s. Um, 5e focuses way more on combat than it
Yes.
does on any other of the three legs of D&D. A lot of people say that it's a three-legged stool. You know, you got exploration, you've got social encounters, you've got combat. And we get way more, even in the new player's handbook, we get way more about combat than we do about the other two parts of that. But I find that um, one of the things I do is I teach kids after school, and I have my last class in one segment today, and yesterday I had the first class in a different segment, so that was nice. But the first class, they were like third through fifth graders. They like looking at maps. They
Mm,
like drawing maps. They
mm.
like traps. They like making maps with traps. And so that's a great way to run a campaign for little ones. So if you're teaching newer, like if you're teaching young players, this might be their cup of tea, you know. Give them a piece of graph paper, they can draw their own maps, show them the maps like I was doing. I just happen to have the starter set, I think, with me. And so I've shown them the map of Phandalin. So they got to look at the map and decide what areas of interest, because after they created their characters, they wanted to go shopping. So I threw a town at them and they saw the Shrine of Luck. And so that's where they ended up. They wanted to go take the coins out of the fountain, out of the well, I guess. So that was their first mission. So that's what they picked. So to do. So, we were trying to figure that out. But yeah, so this can be really fun visually. And, you know, you use, and I use myself a lot of times a battle mat, right? So
Hmm.
a grid that has squares or hexes, squares usually for indoors, hexes for outdoors. Um, and so you have to replicate the map that's in the book online. So, you when you're drawing that stuff, you're counting squares and you're making sure that like paths that double back on each other and have like contiguous walls match because otherwise, so there's a technique to that. There's a little bit of art to that as well. So,
Which is not always my strong suit.
well, I don't know anybody whose it is.
So there's a lost way of playing that I don't see anybody do in fifth edition. We experimented with it a little bit in the Dolmenwood campaign, and it
Yeah.
kind of fell flat. But it used to be that there wasn't that shared battle map. being revealed slowly, either through like the VTT Fog of War or like the Dungeon Master, me literally drawing it with a wet erase marker on that old school vinyl mat. The DM would describe the space to the players, and the players were creating a map. Typically, one player was the mapper. Um, so there would potentially be
Oh, I see what you're saying.
a mismatch between what I have on my page and what you have on your page.
Mm,
In my experience, I have found that that mismatch often comes from a miscommunication between the DM and the player. Again, because this is kind of a lost art. We don't have a lot of practice doing it. I don't have a lot of practice describing things the players aren't used to mapping.
right.
Um, but if that's the way this particular module, I think is built for that. Because there are maze-like qualities, a lot of like false like little corners and cubbies,
Mhm.
and you're looking for secrets as well. So if you are drawing the map, it kind of reveals, if you're doing it well, like the blank spots on the map, right? It's very obvious on the table in front of us when I'm drawing it, but when
Mhm.
you are meticulously going through square by square, it slows down the play big time, especially if you're not practiced. But hey, look, there's this big open area here.
Right.
Maybe we missed a secret door.
That's exactly what happened at one point. It was like I'm like, wait a minute, there's an area here. Let's see if that's there. Terrible perception check, so I don't still don't know whether or not that was there. But that's yeah. And then these kind of interesting like traps where you find tripwires, where you don't
Mm,
find tripwires, and then like a bunch of logs or stones fall on you. So there's like bludgeoning damage. You have to make dexterity saving throws. One was like a glass container that blew up and then maybe a chemical reaction happened or something, but there was a gas, like a heavy gas that fell down to the floor. Uh, at one point, someone had, we had separated the party and Bertram's character, the sorcerer, had gone and disarmed a trap. And then later we got back to that door from the other side and
mm.
opened it, and the trap had already been sprung, so no problem. But that would have been a problem prior to that. So yeah, pretty. It was an interesting session from that standpoint of investigating things that we normally don't do. Now there was combat as well. I mean, we did a lot of we did have a combat encounter.
You had
And,
two difficult combat encounters,
yeah,
yeah.
and fun ones at that. But they were a little bit simplified because we found this medallion, and this we took it from the cult leader, and I think our paladin is wearing it, and
Mhm.
so it essentially kind of freezes undead, or undead will are in awe of it or something, and they won't attack us. But there are constructs out there that are in place to defend certain areas, and they will attack us, and did attack us, and that was fun. They were crystalline, which gives it a nice little. That's kind of a throwback to, I think, those kinds of aesthetics.
Mhm.
Yeah, in the old D&D. So yeah, in fact, the one that you mentioned, I think it was the one that I got the kill on. It was a crystalline. Oh, I forget now. What was the creature?
You took out the Minotaur.
It was a minotaur. That's right.
I
It was
mean,
a
it was a
statue of
statue
a
of a Minotaur,
minotaur.
but yeah.
Right. That's right. Yeah. And how do you fight something like that, right? So at one point Bertram was trying to figure out um if it was vulnerable to certain types of damage, right? Which was really smart. And I thought at first it was just a statue. So apparently I walk in the room, I see the thing, and I just toss a stone at it, and then it gets mad because I hit it upside the head with a rock, and then it starts coming at us. But the paladin has this technique where he'll cast this aura of defense or aura of protection. I can't remember what it is, but it's a special ability that he has.
We called it, it's a basic spell, but we called it like six things last
Yeah,
night.
and basically
Uh
he raises his
he
armor
bumps his
class
AC to, yeah.
to like 22. So he's able to rush in and get into melee with this thing. His proximity of it triggers the rogue's sneak attack. So, but in and just in and of himself last night, At one point, he rolled 59 damage
Yeah.
for a level 5 character. He was rolling like 8 dice, combinations of D6 and D8s. So that was like really impressive. It's always fun when you take a handful of dice and just drop them on the table. And he got to do that a couple times. So
Paladins are Nova machines. He crit, and obviously he pumped a smite into it, and yeah,
two, he
it
had like
was
a
it was dirty. Yeah, no,
he had a
he's
divine
got three
smite
kinds.
because he
Yeah,
was a paladin. He had he had another kind of smite because he was a tiefling.
yeah, he's got
Branding
branding
smite.
smite, and he's got searing spite prepared.
Wow.
So yeah, he doesn't have a lot of them, but
Right.
when they proc, woo, yeah.
Right.
And that one first hit on the Minotaur, the crystalline Minotaur statue was a crit. So yeah, he was
Okay. Gotcha.
collecting dice to roll
Right.
from around the table. Yeah, they still know it pretty good. Paladins are still don't sleep on them.
Even in the new 2024 version. That's great. Yeah, so yeah, he was able to do that because the branding smite was a racial trait. Well,
Doesn't use a spell slot. Doesn't use a
species
spell
trait.
slot.
And then he was able to use a spell slot because you can't do two spells in the same
Hmm.
round,
Hmm.
right? So yeah, that was fun. That was interesting. Um the Oh, we made a classic joke at one point. We were talking about like whether or not this was going to be a fatal dungeon for us because there were a lot of creatures and there was the promise of some treasure. So we thought they were going to be some formidable adversaries, and there were. But we were talking about like people who come to the table. We were talking about different types of players, right? So we're talking about people who come to the table with like 8 pages of backstory, right? For a level 1 character. And so there's this old joke about the wizard who like has this, amazingly long backstory, but he's got 5 hit points and he dies in the first combat encounter. And then
Hmm.
you have to roll a new character. So, it's, I guess the joke was if you have more pages of backstory than you have hit points, that's probably not a good way to
It's
proceed.
that's a problem.
The other
And
way to
yeah,
do backstory is a lot of fun. Like the nice thing about the backgrounds give us backstory. Of course, we have like bonds and flaws. You
not
can
anymore.
you could roll for those before, right? Yeah,
Hmm. Hmm.
they're not in the new one. But we still have trinkets, right? And
Yeah.
I always like trinkets. So I made the kids we were in the session yesterday, I was teaching the little ones. We rolled characters and I made them roll for a trinket. And they're like, what does this do? Like one is a walking stick that glows. Like, that could come in handy. The uh the one though was an old map to ancient ruins,
Mm.
local ruins. And so when they got to Phandalin to do their shopping, right? Or to pillage the well of luck, the Shrine of Luck, there was mention about ruins outside of town. So I said, maybe it's the map that you already have. So a developing backstory is a lot of fun, you know. So just like start with an idea, and then as the adventure unrolls, and Bertram was talking about this, be informed by what happens in the adventure, and then what you know, maybe objects that you pick up, and then that becomes part of your backstory as well. So like, why does the sorcerer carry a quarterstaff, instead of something else?
Yeah, I am all for differentiating your character, making them interesting. I wrote a book about it. But bullet points, not paragraphs. You want to leave room for your thing to connect to what the dungeon master has spent hours preparing,
Yeah,
whether they bought a book or they've homebrewed something, prepared it themselves. You gotta leave room for connections there. I've had a few experiences where what the player is trying to do, like essentially dictates a ton of world building, and it's like, well, this is not cohesive to the ideas that I had. I mean, you show up with an artificer in a lot of campaigns. It's like, well, this is not how the world works. There's no spider tank in my game right now. Maybe there's no dwarfs in my world. Like who knows if you're going to create a character in a vacuum, you have to be willing to change a lot of it. You got to work with the DM and the other players at the table. You know, you can't have one person come in and dictate. And if you really want to do that much work and effort, then you should be the dungeon master. You should be
Yeah,
running the
yeah,
game
yeah,
and put that energy into the world building and accommodating the other players'
yeah.
ideas. Yeah,
Make some really cool NPCs.
yeah.
I've done that myself. I've had, sessions that I've run, and then I just use some of my player characters as NPCs, or I'll take famous NPCs from, you know,
Hmm.
Faerun or whatever, and just throw them in there. So, so like, yeah, you meet Volo. Yeah, it's that Volo, like it's that guy, that's who's sitting at your table,
I
maybe it's,
like grabbing old PCs, especially if the player's at the table. I love bringing back player characters. Does it, it's a situational thing, but woof. And especially like not dropping their name first, just like giving a physical description. It's always fun. That's always a
yeah,
good one.
that is good. I mean, that's the type of thing. Like we like that kind of like callback whenever
Hmm.
we like listen to music, whenever we listen to poetry, things that rhyme, jokes. So why not do that in your D&D campaign? I mean, it's good art, right?
Yeah. And it can be
Stimulates
like
something in the brain.
a story or a statue, right? Maybe that fountain is dedicated to the last campaign's heroes or, someone who dropped in combat or something. There's a lot of ways to do it if you're having the same people at the table for a second bout.
The neat thing about teaching the kids yesterday was I had one kid who's third grader who's absolutely brand new to D&D, doesn't know how to play D&D. And I set up the situation so that when he had a question, I asked the more advanced players at the table to answer the question. And it was interesting to see what they came up with.
Hmm.
But what was really cool was that they even started to invent their own mechanics. So at one point they said, well, somebody's got to put their hand down there in the well, or somebody's got to go down there and like get the coins, right? So they were trying to figure out, they were smart enough to realize that if the well is called the Shrine of Luck, that if they robbed it, that may be an unlucky act, that might have consequences. So they were smart enough to think about that along those lines. That's fine. So they determined, like, they basically figured out a way to draw straws to see who was going to be the unfortunate one that was going to go, they were going to lower into the well. I kept saying it was a fountain. I thought they were just going to dip their hands in, but they decided it was going to be a well, so I changed it. And then, they all rolled dice and the lowest number went, right? So it ends up
Hmm.
being the new player. So now they need rope. They don't know why they don't have any rope. So they're going to go to this provisioner to get rope. And then that turns into this whole like social encounter where they use intimidation. They don't want to pay for the rope. I'm like, the rope's like 2 silver pieces. You guys have like, and they're like, we're not paying for anything. So,
It
okay,
doesn't
fine.
matter how old you are.
Yeah, right. So they try to use intimidation and, um, I started talking in a stutter, um, play acting the character. It's like here's as much rope as you want, and then one of the kids is like, "Are you do you talk like that all the time?" And I'm like, "No, I'm doing a character." So, but that was interesting. And then, yeah, so that's where we got. We got to the point where they were lowering him into the well, and we ran out of time. But it was cool to see, um, when you take your hands off the reins and you let the players, sometimes they'll come up with their own descriptions, complications, and even mechanics to the game. And that's really what it is, right? So like it was so beautiful to see that happen because, to me, that's what it is. I mean, you can play the DM and be the puppet master, and everything has to be coordinated in a certain way, or you can just kind of like free flow it. And you know, with that age kids, if you try to railroad them, man, you try just it's like herding cats. Like you're
Yeah.
not gonna do that. So, roll with it. But yeah, it was fun.
And it shows you like they don't know better yet, right? Like they they're playing like a pure version of the game. But like we do. I mean, we did that last night. You know, we're all 30 to 40 to 50 years
Absolutely.
older than those guys maybe, but like
Yes.
the the player who was wearing the medallion, that was a very important MacGuffin, wasn't there. So it's like, all right, who's gonna wear that? I mean, I asked like, is someone wearing that? I wasn't gonna burn you guys because real life reasons. And yeah, and then we let the dice decide, and then there was like a deferral. Like it made more sense, like story wise. But like my first impulse is like, we have dice. Dice resolve things. Who
Right.
rolls highest gets it. And it's cool to see like, yeah, third graders discovering that, reinventing that. Just like
They
we
love
have random
dice.
number generators. That'll do it.
That's right. That's right. And that's how you settle disputes. Um, it's a civilized way to end
Yeah.
an argument.
I'll do that as a player a lot. If I'm like, I'm
Mm,
not sure what my character would do, or like my character would be torn here. There's clearly like, I don't know, run away, run into danger, whatever, left or right, whatever the decision point is. If I don't have a clear like character-based reason, I'll roll for it. I'll
mm.
do, just like over under on a 10, or I'll do like maybe a wisdom saving throw if it's like, all right, it's like my super ego versus my id here. So yeah, I let the dice decide all the time as a dungeon master, but also as a player.
Yeah, I have in my pack, I just go they're called story dice. And they have
Mm,
little icons on them. And you roll like three of them and put them together, and then there'll be like a clock, maybe, and a sun and like an arrow or something, and then you can like you may be able to let a player like I can use if you use them as a DM, maybe you get one of the players to like figure out what that means, and maybe that's an indicator of what's going to happen next. Or it's almost like a fortune teller rolling bones and then like
hmm
interpreting them, or a tarot card kind of thing, or even a deck of 52, playing cards. Um, there are plenty of people who made systems where each one of those cards means something, uh, just to get an indicator of like which way to go next. And that can be a lot of fun. I've absolutely used the number rolling, the number dice to determine, over a 10, I'm going to do this, and under a 10, I'm going to do that as a player. And it's fair to do that. And I've seen you do it as a DM, as to like, okay, there's an equidistance between this monster and you. It's been attacked by both of you. Which one is it going to attack next? Or if it
Yeah.
has multiple attacks, is it going to use both claw attacks against one character or against two? So, and if you roll in the open the way you do, then there's no uh animosity. It's like it's not me doing it. The dice dictated that this was going to happen next.
Yeah, it does a couple things. It takes away that like that, which is probably especially good with new third graders, fifth graders, getting rid of that like antagonistic DM misunderstanding.
Right.
Often it's a misunderstanding. So I mean, I'm sure it's happening, especially with kids, I guess.
Yeah.
But it also creates it makes a dramatic moment, right? Like I try to apply the monsters as logically isn't always the word because half the time they're operating emotionally or instinctually, but I try to figure out what the monster would do in that situation. Sometimes again, it's a 50-50 split. I'll roll the dice, I'll announce what I am doing, right? Especially if it's like a scrum, right? There's like four people
Right.
around them. They're going first. They're the ones acting. Who are they going to hit? Some monsters are going to go after the biggest target or the smallest target. But sometimes, especially in the heat of the moment, it's like, all right, 1 through 5, 6 through 10, and just announce it, roll it, and then everyone's like, oh no, this number might say it's me. And that increases engagement. It doesn't take away from the vibes. I think it actually helps the vibes. It's a tool to use.
Well, we had a moment like that where Patrick's paladin and I were equidistant to a monster. My character just run up to the monster to get into melee combat. It was this crystal
Mhm.
statue of the Minotaur, and uh, and Patrick took a lot of damage and went down. So one of the reasons I ran at it was because we knew that the paladin had taken damage, and this statue put out some heavy damage because it had
They
this
hit like a truck. Yeah.
big battle axe. And so at level 5 as a rogue ability, I can have my damage with uncanny dodge. So I thought, well, I could take a hit, you know, and use that. That would be my bonus action. And frankly, I just got tired of like just firing a crossbow every round. So like it was time to do something else. And yeah, and it felt good. But that's not what happened, you know. So like, you know, and that's the great thing about D&D is like the dice randomized what's going to happen. So, you know, you think you have a plan, not necessarily. And other player agency can create situations that we did not expect. So at one point, the sorcerer decided that he was going to cast fog cloud over all of us in melee combat. And his logic, which was, you know, decent like logic, was then this giant creature that just dealt out all this damage would have disadvantage against us in order to you know, but we were pretty adamant at that point that we wanted to like put the killing blow on this thing. So it also gave us disadvantage. Yeah. But
That that was a tricky one. On a different night, I might have intervened more or whatever. If I was in your shoes running for third graders, maybe I would have intervened because
mm,
it's flirting with PvP, right? Like I am not going to let you tell a fellow player, what they should be doing on their turn as far as like this is the most optimal thing to burn the monster down the fastest or whatever the hell. Like it's your turn. It's like your sacred right to decide what your character is doing.
mm,
Where your rights stop is where the other player's rights begin, is like, okay, you are impacting the other players at the table now.
mm,
So Fog Cloud is
yeah.
in that weird ground where like, okay, everyone's a disadvantage. I have to play it that like my character is effectively blinded now, don't know what's going on, chaos ensues. And I think maybe if it was earlier in the fight, I would have pushed it back up to like the meta label, the people at the table, not the characters talking, because it's a player interaction at that point, not a character interaction.
Mhm.
But I had the benefit of knowing like, okay, this fight is almost done. It's not going to be a complete disaster, whatever happens here. So
Well, I just thought
I'm
it
going to
was
let it
a,
ride, and I trust these
yeah.
adults. That's
Yeah.
part of
I
it too.
mean, eh, was it optimal? Probably not, but I mean, like, was it there was definitely a 3 against 1 kind of feel at the table at that point where it was like, why'd you do that? But in the end, it made for good story because in the end, it all worked out. So as a rogue, my character was able to stand his ground. If you sacrifice your movement, you can do this steady aim kind of action,
Mhm.
which gives one advantage. So basically, I had you have a advantage, you just do a normal attack roll. And that was enough to kill this thing. So but yeah, so it all worked out. But yeah, that's the kind of thing though where well, you know, here so a sorcerer can do careful spell. And at one point he did do careful spell. He did like a thunder wave and we were all within range of it, 15-foot radius. But because he was able to use careful spell, um, he was able to avoid hitting us, you know, no friendly fire. But I'm sure there are wizards who have cast fireball and like just evaporated parties, you know, just because you got these melee guys in there and the wizard's like, well, here's what I can do, does it, and then has unfortunate consequences. But that's part of the learning curve, you know. I mean, and that's part of the fun of the game, I think. And I think, you know, if you're writing a script for a movie and you know the outcome already, I mean, that's one way to like tell a story. But but this is a totally different interactive story that can be subverted, detoured, run off the tracks at a moment's notice. And I've done it in the past where I didn't know exactly what a spell effect was, and you know, early in my playing career, and people were like, "No, why are you doing that? I'm going to lose concentration on this," or that'll negate like what we're trying to do here. And people have let me get, like let me learn, from mistakes. So or from unfortunate consequences. So,
Yeah, it's a case by case thing. Because sometimes that's the right answer, especially like, okay, you're the rogue. You have uncanny dodge. You have advantage on the deck save. Wizard's throwing fireball in there. You think you're going to survive,
right.
and the enemy's going to drop. You might be pro doing your character might be pro doing it. I generally, I'm always very, I am aware of the line of PvP, and I think a lot of like people who have played games, or MMOs or whatever, people are that breaks you out of the character thing and into the player side of things. Like
Mm,
if we turn on like PvP is like a switch. It's either on or it's off. It's not
mm.
just like case by case. And like case by case is maybe the way you should resolve it, but it's an agreement at the table. Are we doing PvP or not? And I didn't invent the name Kobold Fight Club. That is a very good or was a very good. I don't know how it looks now. We don't have the new monsters yet, but a encounter builder, Kobold Fight Club. Yep, yep. I in the basement of the bar in my homeworld, there is a fight club run by three kobolds in a trench coat named Tyler, who where players can engage in PvP combat. And like I've had the PCs like sitting down, placing bets. All the players make characters. Spoiler alert, the barbarian is almost always the favorite.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, and you can duke it out for a session, and that will, in my experience, get it out of everybody's system because it's a different game. It's not quite as fun as Dungeons and Dragons. And yeah, we kind of clear out the pipes. It's like, okay, that was fun, kind of. Now let's go have an adventure where I trust the people around me as I delve into this mythic underworld, and I'm not afraid to turn my back on this guy because he's going to potentially burn me alive. Like, why would I go adventuring with someone like that? Um, so yeah, it's tricky, and you got to figure out the trust at the table, the maturity level at the table. But like by default, I think the PvP switches off, and you convince me that everyone's going to be cool, and we can turn it on if you want to, but it's a different style of play now. But especially with kids at the table, you catch me in the fireball. It's like, all right, I turn around and shoot you in the face with my crossbow. It's like, okay, hold on, what do we do? Like it spirals out of control very quickly that way.
Yeah, very early on, okay, so there's a couple of things at play here. So very early on with kids, I don't necessarily, sometimes I've stated it at the beginning of the class. There's no P versus, there's no player killing, there's no PKing, right? Player characters don't kill other player characters. They don't steal from them either, right? So there's a couple ways to deal with this. So one is like the Adventure League way of doing it, which is there are no evil characters.
Mhm.
Attacking your fellow player is an evil act, so you can't do that. That just like stated at the beginning of Adventure League, right? Also, um, in Adventure League, it's a one shot. At the end of it, whatever treasure is collected by any one character is also collected by all the other characters. So if there is a cape of billowing, if it's not consumed during the course of the adventure, everybody gets a cape of billowing. So it's not destroyed. If there's one healing potion and nobody drinks it during the course of the adventure, everybody has a healing potion left over. Same with gold. If somebody finds 107 gold at the end, every player gets 107 gold. They don't have to split it. So that's one way to deal with it. Another way is the organic way, which comes up with the kids, especially. They're used to playing games where it's a zero-sum game, where there is it's the last man standing, right?
Mhm.
A lot of games
Mhm.
are like that.
Mhm.
Chess is like that. There's a clear winner, right? So one of the things that when it comes up, it's important to use that as a teachable moment to say to those kids, this is a different kind of game.
Yeah.
What we're doing here is we're all collectively working together in order to achieve a goal. This is not a rivalry. And in fact, there is either karmic. I had a kid in the middle school grade, he has karma points.
Mm.
So if somebody does something that he doesn't think is moral, and right, he'll assign a negative karma point, and then that will affect them. And I don't know exactly what the mechanic is that he uses. For me, I would probably cause like disadvantage on attack rolls or failed attack roll randomly or something like that to make sure that the consequences were severe enough that people didn't want to do it. But there's also a magical force field. So, like, whenever your weapon somehow detects that it's being used against an ally, it's not effective.
Hmm.
It's just not effective. A magical shield pops up. Uh, all players are protected by that. If you try to steal their gold while they're not looking, that doesn't work. Um, it's like the gold like goes into your hand, then disappears right back into the other person's pocket. Some kind of mechanic like that. And if you explain that slowly or persistently enough, they get tired of doing it and they get on to something else. But if you let it go, it can be a very adversarial game, and it can almost be bullying at some point. So,
Sure.
with the kids, so you definitely want to make sure that you're emphasizing that there is no bullying of each other at the table, real life characters or not. So my character would do that is not an excuse, right?
Correct.
For
Yeah.
bad social behavior. And actually, what's interesting is the DMG talks about this. So like the new Dungeon Master's Guide is circumspect enough about the game. It's been being played now for 50 plus years, that they know that there can be uh, mischievous players, for lack of a better term, at the table who
Hmm.
just want to do something in a game setting that they can't do in real life, right?
Right.
And
Right.
that's fine if you're doing that against a warlord, an NPC that's malicious. That's part of the game, right? But we're not going to do that to each other. And especially if we're like not best buddies that grew up, with each other from 8 years old, um, and have known each other a long time. And if you want to do that in your homebrew game and you guys can all handle it, nobody's telling you can't do that. But if you're playing at my table, we're not doing that. Like, we're just
And I've
not.
run my last campaign on my Wednesday night squad essentially became an evil campaign. All of the characters were despicable. They were legit stealing the MacGuffins from each other. There was a lot of plotting against each other. Um, but there's a bunch of experienced players who are experienced with each other as well. It's advanced level play. You don't start there. If you start there, things are going to get real weird real fast.
Yeah.
But you can end up there, and it's fun for a while. And it actually kind of, again, is a palate cleanser. I like the variety. It makes the heroic characters feel better again. But it's tricky. It's very
Yeah.
easy for it to go wrong. And again, by default, you can turn that on. By default, I would start it in the off position. And
Hmm.
because if you don't know each other, it can get personal very quickly. And it's very challenging for the DM. I am an experienced dungeon master. I had some moves to make it so that like I don't need you to be the heroic character to make this story make sense, to make you engage with this plot. Like I can bring a bigger, badder evil. Doesn't matter if you don't care about anybody else. This is coming for you as well. There's ways to do it, but they are more challenging. You have less options at play. And again, it can just go very wrong very quickly. So I don't recommend anybody start there or any player start there if they're in a new campaign. I don't care if you've been playing for 20 years. You sit down at a table with new people and you're like, I want to make a sleight of hand check and steal the cleric's holy symbol. It's like, get out of here. No, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. I mean, there's other ways to prove your sleight of hand ability, right? You know,
Yes.
um, I think, well, I remember one particular incident where I was playing with, this was when 5e first came out. So it was probably like 2015 or so. Um, we had been playing for a few months and we had a newer player in the group. And and there were these two guys that just, I don't know what their energy just didn't vibe. Like one guy was a experienced player, hardcore player, almost always played like a kind of a tiefling, kind of a you know, not evil, a little bit evil. I don't know, kind of like he was into the role playing of it.
I
And
like tieflings, but there's a type of player that only plays tieflings, and they
right,
are it's
right.
a meme. They are difficult.
And so the other guy's character, he wanted to experiment. So he wanted to make a new character. So he made like an Aarakocra, and they hadn't introduced the Aarakocras were, that was relatively new species for us. And so they hadn't introduced him yet to the party. So they were in the middle of a scenario where there was a succubus, I think. And he was on like the mayor's chest. We walk into the room, he's on the mayor's chest, or she's on the mayor's chest. And so we player characters are there, but then the Aarakocra flies in through the window. That's how the DM allowed the Aarakocra to be introduced. Now we did not know this character, and it was flying through the window. So the tiefling says, "Well, I'm going to shoot the thing flying in through the window," and you know, the players like, "Why are you going to shoot me?" He's like, "I'm not
Mm.
shooting you, John. I'm shooting your character." And he's like, "Yeah, but I just got here. Like, what are you doing?" He's like, "Well, my character doesn't know. He's got a winged creature here that's attacking the mayor. Another winged creature flies in through the window. He's gonna react to that." And so at first it was funny. Like and then we realized that like John was actually a little bit hurt by that. So it stopped being funny like right away. And you know, there were like still hard feelings about that sessions later, like you're not
Yeah.
going to kill my character, are you, and this kind of stuff. So yeah, it was weird. It made it weird, you
It
know.
makes it weird very quickly. And you can address that. You can be like, my character considers shooting you, right? Like you can have
Right.
that conversation. You can talk about how like it's a weird moment, but like
The diplomacy of it.
the players are obligated to form a party and play together. It's not the dungeon master's job to make you all play nice, right?
Right.
Maybe if you're leading an after school program about how to play D&D, yeah, sure, your job is to
It's
make sure
really your
everybody's
job.
playing.
Yeah.
It's literally your job. If you're running for grown-ups at the friendly local game shop or online or whatever, like, no, that you're playing the game wrong, bro. It's in the player's handbook now. Like, you're not following the rules. You're breaking the rules of the game.
Right.
Please stop and play the game that we're trying to play. Your character needs to work together with this character. If you built a character that can't or won't, then you've built a bad character and you need to fix it or make a new one.
Mhm.
Simple as that. And that is spelled out very clearly in the new PHP, which I like quite a bit. So yeah, there's no refuge. What my character would do, it's like, boom, you built the wrong kind of character then. Your character is a monster and we can kill it. And it's
Yeah.
actually it's mine now. Your character's mine now, make a new one.
It's a social game, and
It's a social game.
can't be antisocial at the table, Like your character may be able to do that in certain circumstances, generally to NPCs. But yeah, you can't. Yeah,
And I'll tell you what, I mean, the dungeon master's a person too,
right,
right? Like, depending on the maturity level of the dungeon master, but like, I don't know if it's a table full of jerk characters and they're just like they're bullying every NPC. The dungeon master's on the receiving end of all of those conversations too, right? Like the dungeon master's a heel
right,
in a lot of ways, but like at the same time, it's just like, okay, you guys are just going to be mean to all of every person I put in front of you, and like you need to like agree to go along with some of them so I can give you quests and like rewards and stuff. Like
right,
explain to me why this town wouldn't rise up with pitchforks and torches and
right,
try to chase you out
right.
of here.
So that's what's going to happen, to these kids if they continue to like bully shopkeepers for rope and things like that. Is that the town militia is going to like kick them out of town, right?
Yeah. Actions
And
have consequences.
yeah, there's going to be consequences, right? So they're going to um
And I
go to
love
the
the realization of like, and again, I don't run for kids. It's a whole different level of math. But like, all right, you guys want to open this campaign by upsetting the goddess of luck?
right.
Please do. Please do.
That's gonna be so much fun.
It's like, what'd you get?
But
17? Actually, no, it's a 12. Why? Because Timora is mad at you and you have a
mm,
-5 across the
mm,
board. You
mm.
better make peace. Yeah, I could do a lot with that. Please,
Yeah,
please steal money from the wishing well.
yeah, you can make a pilgrimage to, Timor, or maybe she sends, a priestess of hers sends you on a quest to find an artifact or something in order to remove that curse. I mean,
Hmm.
that's setting up for all kinds of stuff. So like I got like, you know, I can get 5 more sessions out of that. Absolutely. You
Sure.
know?
The Luck Goddess is my favorite deity in D&D because it's the most meta, right? Timora is the like the hobbity Pathfinder one, Pathbringer one. The Pathfinder goddess, it's like Desdemona? What's her name? I
Mm.
forget her name off the top of my head, but her holy symbol is a butterfly, right? Like the randomness of like the butterfly effect and all of that.
Ah,
Um, and it's just such a fun trope to play with because people don't necessarily see it coming. Everyone's like, oh, the sun god and the devil who raises the undead. It's just like, well, the luck goddess is like over here. It's like, no, you make her upset. Like your whole life depends on luck, where you are testing everything you do with dice. That's her domain, quite literally.
yeah. In our evilish Spelljammer campaign, which got a little bit evil last time. And I have to admit, like, I was a little bit like, this is interesting. We're just gonna wipe out a village. That's not usual stuff we do in D. I usually do in D&D. But anyway, the one character is a cleric, and he's the goddess of misfortune,
Mhm.
Mystaria or something like that. Um, is so the way he has to phrase things is interesting, and he can roll bones to see like portents if
Mhm.
things seem like auspicious, inauspicious, or unclear. And yeah, so it's interesting the way he phrases things when he's talking about or trying to convert someone to worship the goddess of misfortune, right? So basically, you're saying, you know, woe to my enemies, weal to me, So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, but and also he's got this kind of like what will be what will be kind of attitude about it too, which is if your goddess is a goddess of misfortune, that might be an attitude you would adopt, right? It's like I can't control it. I don't know why
Hmm.
bad things happen to good people. It just happens, That's the whim of the goddess. So
Yeah.
but we
There's
have
so
dice. And the dice don't care, they're inanimate objects. There's no rationality to them,
hmm hmm
whether they're molded out of some kind of chemical plastic. I have no idea what they're made out of. And or we're trying to figure out why these wooden dice that Patrick has or how they were made.
Mm.
Yeah, and he was trying to figure out what that is, how they were actually manufactured. So if anybody knows how you make wooden dice or how they make a wooden 20-sided die, put it in the comments. I'd love to know. I didn't go deep dive that, but yeah, just tell us. I won't have to go on a deep dive. But
Yeah, because it seems so simple. It's like, oh, wood is the easiest material, but it's also like, yeah, but the tolerance, if this is remotely fair, this is not something you're gonna whittle.
I don't,
I mean,
yeah, right. The density
maybe
would
people are
be,
that talented, but
yeah. Well, just getting the like little triangles the same size would be on a 20-sided surface. That would be really
yeah,
hard.
yeah.
You pull it off with a 6-sided die probably, but even that
Yeah,
would be
the
hard.
cube feels easy, or even that. I mean, like, I don't think I'm capable of doing a
Honestly, though, like I've made
balanced
them out
cube.
of clay, because we had a clay studio, and I made 8-sided die are the easiest ones to make. But trying to
Hmm,
make a cube with
hmm.
like 6 perfect surfaces, not as easy
Yeah,
as you think.
no, yeah, challenge.
No. So, all right, good session, I think. So we talked about a lot. But yeah, so this session was about exploration mostly, a little bit of combat, really not that much social stuff going on. So, you can do that. You can,
Yeah,
there was
you
bit
had
of
a little
social
at
at
the
the
end.
end.
You met Bayleaf at the end,
Yeah,
and
everybody
yeah.
wanted to take a long rest, and we were trying to figure out how to do that with a whole bunch of evil cultists in the room. So the evil cultists are not going to tell you they're evil, right? And
No,
their
I mean they don't think. Well, they know they're evil, I guess, but they don't.
but their point of view is they
They
have a
feel justified.
worldview.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So all right. Well, I hope this was helpful to everybody out there, and we'll see you guys on the next one.
Like
Peace.